And thank you so much for joining us right here on KXWR, Saline, Arizona. Yat A D Anigi Hastado Wishe or Kit Hastabala Oskera, Kutaho, Bazila Ultra, Dine College, do eats Aquande, so D Anigi, Behitandawi Neto, Navajo Nation, Department of Dine Education, Ajade Nishigi, Judik ad Atha Nahe, Aquande Igisaya has Taata Nahe, Ajed. The Helchin do the Altao, a costo di Quasansa, Benash do, yet a quaggy, Aja the beach in the kind here, a quand the Benash in the hat agi, Ado the Altago, Shinto, Hada il Tatole, A be hit the Hoid Neto, D Anigi. So we welcome our friends, our panelists, and leadership of the Navajo Nation Department of Dine Education. So a lot of great information to share with you on our forum this evening from Dine College. And you can also share with a friend to get online at dinecollege.edu, and you'll scroll down and look for KXWR. And better yet, if you do have an iPhone and you get on dinecollege.edu, that's the best you can get quality on the iPhones. And I will be taking questions as well. But right now, we'd like to have our panelists introduce themselves this evening. So I'd like to say Yate and check it into our panelists. And let's start off with our opening remarks. And we'll start with Patricia Ghani, Acting Supervisor. Yate.
Yate o LA Hehe Kwage DE Anigi Kodo Naha ya Kodo Yanske Shay Kodo Shidoji Shik Edo Shidine Yate Patricia Ghani Eya Yanisiedo, Acting Superintendent Eya Shinanish in Kwage Department of Dine Education Saho Zanige. I do have on the call with me some staff members from Department of Dine Education this evening, Dr. Kelvin White, Shayla Yellowhair, and Dr. Andy Nez, Cody Begay. So we are very happy to host this evening's function here. Kwage amado eje no sinigi kwajin ogiz. Di ya kodo baj ahod Ultra ya data des called go yeche school year 2020 and 21. Ko ya khan so she ben nache ya ado leet abe nahot igi ya ba khoni zi ado ya alto ben nache at alto ado nihinahat atnantle Kog at ya kunza the whole jishti ultra inada il trapich hol jish Ko ya benahat ahan sogoshi Ajigishi yisi ba yel kido na idol kido les amado je ado alchiniyajan no sahigi ache amasane no lido anale hastido anale istan isinol shi di anigi ahehe ako She ya deets in the janina shlido ashin bashichin tachi ida shechedo todich ini da shenale Tech Jaholiede ya yasi nasha a kokwaege ashananish as acting superintendent a kodi kwaege anigi ya the ultra nas nelego the principals ne ado superintendent sto kwaege ya thalt ego ya panel ilia di kwaege na idol kido ade yan khilkhalne dolal sto di ultra analne benahat ahigi ya di Navajo Nation Board of Education adada ya EJ special meeting gilnigo Navajo Nation School Reopening Plan bedi nigo be la azlin iltenle March ya da eko aji gidi kwaege COVID-19 de kosnta nahast eight ad da hat no nalni higi Aye han sogoshi ya nich hostne do aja an dolt esli ko ben nache ya di bohones zad ultra nalnehigi han sogoshi ko ben nache ya di kodo amendments bedi ni go ya bihi so Board of Education adana ya kilcha ye la asli we anticipate a 100% return to in-person learning in the fall. semester of school year 2021 and 22. So ajaba hasla atil neto lel akonde yadit atinde di na be hob nahasso ajanat ahn linigi Navajo Nation Council ya legislation ila CO-84-20 online learning only yilnigo ajabe has ani atin da ajabe has ani gi nalsos go undida di ultra anda dolni. Okay, we do have some time and process that we are working with to have a rescission of legislation that calls for online learning only. And so we want to bring before you an opportunity and to elicit and solicit your questions for school leadership. Introduce we have the school principal from Delcon Community School, Bill Wachunas Anigi Ado Le Navajo Preparatory School. Dara Tabram Dean of Student for Community Engagement at Navajo Preparatory School is also amongst our panel this evening. We also have Dr. Shannon Goodsell, Superintendent from Window Rock Unified School District. In addition to that, we have representation from the medical field. Dr. Jeff Powell from the Shiprock IHS Service Unit is here also on the panel. So Ashin Khan so she yan hina the kid halado nihitil Ashin hala 8 up and hat adi ultra and dol niligi. Is it safe? What can we foresee? What is the expectation of me as a parent as the schools are planned for reopening? Ukot Ashin ya ban so kes. Uko amado ado tilke. The past school year. We know that there have been many challenges the past school year. You as parents have served as the instructional assistant, instructional facilitator for the past year. And I want to extend my appreciation to each of you for helping support our learners. Is that on the hitnit ego ya hot beach any kato big etit lehen ledi quagget the cost nast aids ada bit ni gon kit ni igi a call ya consago ya welcome address ya naha ishla do lechik ado shidene ado. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and hand the mic back over to you, Ellie.
Well, thank you so much, Patricia Ghani, Acting Superintendent, Njanon, Hichahensito, Nigo, Benkatish Jain, Ladi, Elchine, Hanachi, Doha, da Iltra, Jupita Hilza, Ani, Oko, Shin He, and it Ahido, this change a beach, any Kaido later call, Ada Ben Antin, Nicheli, Masana Ben Antine, Ek Ade, this change be Nane Kato later, what Ella he has. So great information that was shared, and that yes, and we are ready in the state of Arizona of how we'd like to have our students be back in the buildings and the classrooms, back on the bus. And I know that they've been carrying around their backpacks, their laptops, and I think it was a learning being online. But now the excitement is hearing the school bell ringing and that we'll be back in a classroom. So thank you so much. As we move on to our next panelist introduction, representing the Western central part of Delcon Community School. They are the home of the Eagles. That's Mr. Bill Wachunas. Good evening. Thank you so much, and give us an official introduction.
Thank you. Yate say ya Bill Wachunas Inase, Schenectady, New York, Nishe, Westport, New York, Bashachi, Lithuanian Dasha Che and French Canadian Dasha Nali, Principal Delcon Community School, Danash Nish. I have been principal here at Delcon Community School since 2015. Prior to that, I was a principal down in Yuma, Arizona for 8 years. And in a past life, I was in the Marine Corps for 16 years. So I am pleased to be here and ready to answer any questions the best that I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bill Pachunas from Dale Collin Community School. Thank you. A lot of good things that are happening in that local area as well. On to the Navajo Preparatory. Do we have Shauna Vicente in the house? Tagashi. We have a representative from Navajo Prep.
Sure, yat she dara tabor munishye, belagana nishliv, belagana bashishchin, belagana dashache, belagana dashanale. And I'm so sorry that Mrs. Shauna Allison Vicente is not here this evening. She wanted to be on the call, but unfortunately she had something that kept her away. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. I am the Dean of Student and Community Engagement at Navajo Preparatory School. I'm excited to share some of the updates from the school, share our process in creating a return to school plan, and to talk to you a little bit about the ways that we've approached this process throughout the last year. As a Belagana non-native school leader, I am especially grateful for all the work that the communities of the Navajo Nation have contributed to creating these return to school plans. It's been collaboration and deep commitment on the part of all stakeholders. And I'm truly excited to share our updates with you all this evening.
Right. We also congratulate Navajo Preparatory winning the state championship and being a broadcaster representing, I know Navajo Prep in the past 10 years have been very successful in the academic and being on the Dean's list. So being a team player out there as they represent as an A student and an A player on the court, off the court. So congratulations. And I see you have a full house right behind you.
Oh, thank you, LA. We're so excited for our teams. They've done great. You should see the GPA averages of our athletic program. I think the girls basketball team was sitting at 3.7 GPA last year. So we have athletes and we have scholars, and we are so proud of them. Thank you for the shout out.
Along with Rainey Chris as well, and Shauna Vicente, who is also a graduate from, it's not Navajo Prep, I think it was Navajo Academy back in the day, but it goes all the way back to Navajo Mission back in the 60s and 70s. So you got to know your history. And thank you so much. On to Dr. Shannon Goodshell, Superintendent of Winter Rock High School, one of the Bihuitzit Event Center, a beautiful facility out there. And earlier you had talked about the new legislation under Arizona. So give us an official introduction and elaborate a little on some great information to share.
LA, thank you very much. This is Dr. Shannon Goodsell, Superintendent, Window Rock Unified School District. We are excited about firing up academics and athletics for the next school year. So go Scouts.
There you have it.
Just some interesting things coming up for the public schools that are on the Navajo Nation or tribal lands and laws that have been put in act by Governor Ducey. In essence, those laws are compelling all public schools to return to in-person learning for the next academic school year. I also am the president of the Nava Apache Superintendent Consortium, and that consortium represents school districts in both Navajo and Apache counties. We have had extensive superintendent meetings regarding the implementation of CDC guidelines and how we are preparing for our students to return to work. Additionally, the state of Arizona has required all public schools on the Navajo Nation to complete a document for them, and that document is for publication and for public viewing and for public forum. And that is our return to school documentation that is provided for the state. That documentation covers everything from wearing masks to implementing CDC guidelines to immunization shots to how we're going to handle bus schedules and lunch schedules. It is quite an in-depth report that every public school that exists on the Navajo Nation is preparing, not only for view for the public, not only for viewing via the Arizona Department of Education and our governing board, but also as well for viewing via DOTI. We are excited to partner with the Navajo Nation, and we're looking forward to next year.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. Go Scouts with a new school year we're looking forward to, and a new superintendent, great people who have been involved with Winter Rock Unified School District. Thank you so much, Dr. Goodsell. On to Dr. Jeffrey Bowell of Indian Health Service. Yate, good evening.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jeff Powell. I am a pediatrician and I have a master's in public health from UNC Chapel Hill. And I have had the great honor of working within the communities in and around Shiprock since 2002. Prior to that, I grew up in Ohio before kind of traveling the country during my training. I'd like to share that I have myself two children who are in their own paths on their educational, way. I have a 14-year-old who just finished her 8th grade year, and she's excited to be going to high school next year. And I have a 20-year-old who is in college in Western Colorado, up in Gunnison, Colorado. So they're both thriving, and I also exist within a family of teachers. My wife is a teacher, and 2 of her sisters are public school teachers, and we all live in southern Colorado, right adjacent to this region of northern New Mexico. So I have that perspective as the, from a health perspective, but also a personal perspective, being with my family, of course, and all those people that I hold dear, and watching their whole process through this whole thing. So I'm excited to join. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Powell, to be part of our Indian Health Service. And a lot of question will be targeted toward your title of the Indian Health Service and the CDC guidelines and how we have survived the COVID of 15, going on 16 months now. And as we recall, where were you when the day when we first heard the case, Mr. Powell?
Well, I mean, I was between Durango and Shiprock when I heard about the first cases on Navajo Nation. I was actually up in Colorado, up in the mountains when Colorado had their first case, and then it was about 5-6 days after that we heard about the first cases in northern Arizona, and I remember the shock of that, thinking. I don't know what everybody else was thinking, but we were hoping we would have a few more weeks or days at least to continue to get everything organized. So that's a good question. I think many of us will remember that moment when that kind of hit us in the gut. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Powell. And I think we all are aware of where we were at when the first case was announced. I was at the New Mexico State Tournament, waiting for tomorrow's state championship for Navajo Prep, and how we were in the bubble of just the players and the coaching staff to be part of that, and leaving the land of enchantment in Albuquerque. The very next day, I was out of Albuquerque, and I think we all isolated ourselves, but it's been a journey for us. Looking forward to a lot of good things as well. And we'll come back to Dara from Navajo Prep. So can you tell us how the involvement with the students online when the pandemic started, and the successful side of how the outcome was from the education side of Navajo Prep?
Yeah, thank you, Ellie, for that question. I think it's really important to think back to that first case that we experienced, because it reminds us of how far we've come in the past year and a half. We started our distance learning and we weren't ready. I mean, we heard about it and we had spring break, and then we were virtual, and we were trying to figure out as a school, how do we do this? How do we transition our entire school into an online setting? And at that first week after we transitioned, we struggled because we didn't have the technology, the internet, all of these different components that are so essential to distance learning. And so we've had to adapt. The entire year, we've been adapting. But what I'm proud of at Navajo Prep, and what I'm so impressed by our community, is everybody's ability and willingness to adapt and change along the way. And I can truly say that our processes have improved and our systems have improved. We started our virtual distance learning in that first couple of weeks trying to finish out the school year with emails. Hey, email us this assignment. Text it to me if you have to. Send me a picture. Find a way to get it to my teachers. We've progressed. So at Navajo Prep, we worked all summer last year we have to know there's a better way. How can we improve our systems? How can we make this learning better? We can't control the virus. We can control what we do as a school. So we worked really hard to create a system that would allow our students to access educational opportunities from home. And one of the things that we did at Navajo Prep was we transitioned to a one-to-one learning system, meaning every student got a laptop. Every staff person got a laptop. And while we had laptops before, we transitioned to an Apple laptop. So every student got a MacBook Air. Every teacher got a MacBook. And this allowed us to work better online. But of course, our internet issues continued. And so our IT department worked around the clock to create a system where students could connect from wherever they were. For me, when the pandemic started, I didn't have internet at home. And so I was working off a hotspot on my phone, just like a lot of our students were. We were able to progress our technology as a school. We were able to we started surveying students. Okay, what internet works best in your home environment? Are you AT&T? Are you Verizon? Or do you have Sacred Wind? Do you have Frontier? What do you have? And if you don't have any of those things, then what do we do? And so we got to the point where we were looking at getting HughesNet for our students. We had staff who would go out to students' homes and literally install an antenna on the roof of their houses so that they could have that signal, so they could participate in their classes online. And so I know that we've worked hard to make things better for our students, make things better for our teachers. But every step of the way, we were not just thinking, how do we make virtual learning okay? We were thinking, how do we make a return to school okay? How can we make our school campus safe? How can we adapt what we're doing so that we can bring students home? Because despite all of that work, we know for some students it wasn't enough, and that they were continuing to experience technology issues, or even just social issues like loneliness and the feeling of a lack of connection to their friends and peers. And sometimes it's hard to understand things when you feel alone at home. So those were all things we were thinking about at the school. And we would try to remedy it. Here's one thing you can do. Here, we're calling you. We're talking to your parents. We're giving online virtual workshops, cultural nights, everything we can do. But at the same time, we're also putting new flooring into the dorms. We're installing touchless toilets across our school. We're taking all of the research across the country to make our school a safer place, with the goal we want to bring everyone back when it's time to do so. So I really think that as this pandemic has progressed, we have, and I think all schools have done this, committed themselves. How can we be better? Not just how do we respond to COVID, how do we respond to the ugliness of this virus, but how do we make our school a better place so that when we do return in 100% capacity, it's safe and progress has been made.
Very well elaborated, and what you had shared with us needed to be heard. So thank you so much for what has transitioned into where we are at, representing from Navajo Preparatory School. On to Bill Wash-Nunes, principal from Dale Con Community School. I'm sure you have experienced something different because you are in a remote area. Have you worked with the community of Sabadalgai School, Indian Wells Satellite School, onto Loop, Bird Spring School? So how is the partnership in the remote area from your side, representing from Dale Con Community School?
Well, we did reach out to some of the other schools, some of the other principals, to see how we could join resources and what each other was doing, because there were I talked to Miss Etta Shirley from Little Singer, and I also talked to Luke Schools on what they were doing. One of the good things that helped me a lot was I also participated in some of the cognitive reviews for some of the local schools and got to talk more in depth with some of the school leaders in our area to see what was going on. I think Dara, said what she said was spot on. And it almost sounded at one point like she was talking for Delcon and our surrounding schools of the issues we had. One of the big issues, of course, here for all the schools in the Western area was where a lot of our students live. You just can't even get internet. We went out to test where broadband could be had, and we did provide Wi-Fi and hotspots throughout the area, but it was really difficult. We still provided every student with a laptop, and for students that could not get online, we provided flash drives. Our teachers would load lessons on flash drives, and we shared that information with other schools, what they were doing, how they were doing attendance, what issues they were having, and it did help us solve it. Again, just like Dara stated, on the Western region, when the pandemic hit, everybody thought, well, okay, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Well, here we are over a year later, and of course, we're still not back. But what that did was, the first 2 to 3 weeks, we had a lot of problems, and all the schools in our area did also, trying to get students online, attendance, get lessons to them, get lessons returned. And that's one of our successes too, I think, is this past year we went from back last spring where we might have 25 to 35% of the kids daily checking in, and we're calling them up and trying to get online, to where on a typical day now, at the end of the school year, we had over 80% of our students checking in daily, and we still had some, connection problems and work coming in. But, it was very, very difficult. But we did do like I said, we reached out, I talked to some of the other principals in the area to see what they were doing, how, they were handling the situation. I had principals and school board members from other schools call me and ask me how we were responding. So, we do try to collaborate as much as possible to share ideas and, all to try to make things, better in, providing instruction to our students.
I think a lot of great communication throughout the schools in the state of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. Thank you so much, representing from Delcon Community Schools. So we're pretty much all on the same page. So we're going to lead right into our questions and starting off, and also the chats that are coming in from our viewers out there. Thank you so much. And we'll get with you. But Shayla, thank you. We'll get to your question. But first, so we're talking about the school reopening. So for all panelists, here's a question for you. Reflect on this past year. What is one thing you would celebrate? What should parents ask for schools, districts to better prepare for fall 2021? And how have you shared your school reopening plan with stakeholders? Starting with Patricia Ghani.
Nana LA do quite get a kid. How did school leadership reach out to parents to work with those stakeholders in formulating the school's local plans for how to safely reopen? Department of the Net Education do principal do superintendent's a weekly school leadership meetings nigo. We set forth certain expectations for school leaders. First and foremost, we communicated from Department of the Net Education that it is critical for the local schools to engage their parents, whether it is by surveying or hosting similar meetings as we are doing tonight through virtual means, to hear their perspective, Where are they in terms of a safe reopening for schools, and what suggestions do they have for school leadership's consideration? John Khalchini e ya a yisi a yo ini ni do bahasti igi benana e kodo ultra benat anin linigi khajo olle aj amado je ebelnas nishbedi ni go e khot abe eden hodid I hope to also have our panelists of school leaders to also share what exactly they have done at their local levels to engage the parent perspective in the preparations made for a safe reopening. Jadi kwaege e yad atin de behas ani seltzos. AAD Navajo Nation Council yad la asli igi aje yadi online learning only yilnigo et ati seltzos. Akodi kwaege bejhol jish. Kwaege COVID-19 igi numbers igit yisi ya atza. Do ultra andol niligit bohonedza. Akondit kwiji yat atin de di Kodo Navajo Department of Health under the leadership of Dr. Jill Jim. Do as a ich enedan linigi yelindal nisht achana go kwiji. Ati khaidel di kwaege nalni higi aje yides akon zahan nahaljishko. Gating principles ilninigi big echo ochot Ako di kwaege numbers igit atid on adult echo. 14 days in a row, Jine. Under a certain threshold of cases that would provide some supports for a progression into the green phase of reopening the Navajo Nation. Ako kwado atin de ba Department of the Net Education to guide leadership in decision-making to rescind the current standing legislation. So I know we get that question a lot. When will the schools reopen? So there is a process involved where the Navajo Nation Council has to rescind their current standing legislation in order for us to have schools reopen. Then there's certain steps too from Department of the Net Education. I mentioned that there is an approval of the Navajo Nation School Reopening Plan. There are some criterions within that speak to the safety protocols that schools must have and put into place. Di walkthrough yilninigi comprised of a local team. Parents in terms of these preparations need. So as those are satisfied and as schools file those school reopening plans with the Department of the Net Education, we will be able to reopen based on the health data and meeting the criteria for gating principles. And then also the rescission of legislation. So it is a process, and I hope to convey that procedure and process to everyone. If we can also hear from school leadership in terms of how they have arrived at the safety plans and protocols that they have in place in terms of their preparedness for a safe reopening. Thank you.
Very good. That'll lead right into Delcon Community School Principal. Bill, if you can elaborate.
Yes, well, of course, we're following the Navajo Nation guidelines and also the CDC guidelines. We put together a plan, and we are having our local health officials review our plan. That is Winslow Indian Healthcare Center, specifically working with one of the head people down there, Sasha Nels. And, we have the plan. Once the plan, they approved our plan again in line with the Navajo Nation plan, the CDC plan. And then once we get all the signage up and the floor markings down, we had scheduled for them to actually come through on May 4th to do their walkthrough inspection, the health department, to see how we were doing. We have, scanners set up in the front to take temperatures and record, how students are, how they feel, those type of things. And we have floor markings down, wall markings, signage up. And of course, we hired additional personnel through the CARES Act to help supervise students to escort them from one place to the other while they wear masks. Unfortunately for us, we had a water pipe break, and so now we're redoing that all over again. Caused quite a bit of damage. It broke on the weekend and flooded the school. But also, we're already having lines for once that's done to put the signage back up, to do everything that we need to do to be ready. And we've notified the BIA. They are standing by to do the actual building inspection for ventilation. And we have, again, a Winslow Healthcare Center standing by as soon as we ask them to, that within a 1 or 2 day time frame, once we notify them, they will come up and they will, of course, inspect our building. Once we get a pass, basically from Winslow Healthcare Center and from the BIA, our plan will go in front of our board along with the Navajo Nation plan, so they can compare them to see that we are in compliance. Our school board would approve it. And then once Navajo Nation Council approves students return to school, we'd be able to have students, of course, return to school. So we are going through the process. One of the things we have been doing is we try to be transparent as possible about what's going on at the school. We've sent newsletters home every month, and approximately about every 2 weeks, we were sending update letters home throughout the school year, telling them what was going on, what was happening after school. And one of the things we did was, when this thing started, we had one staff member right away that came down positive for COVID. Throughout the year, we had 14 staff members. A couple of them required hospitalization. The last positive case we had was basically the middle of January this year. But since then, of our 67 employees, 66 of them have been fully vaccinated, and only one has not been vaccinated, and that's due to a health issue, and that person does not actually come into the school building itself. They work in another building, but that's because of a doctor's waiver at this point. But they are actually scheduled to get vaccinated in a couple more months once this health issue ends. So we are taking all the precautions. We're looking up, setting up hygiene and sanitation stations. Just like Dara stated earlier, we're looking at no-touch hand dryers, no-touch sinks, no-touch toilets. So again, that we are not, spreading any type of disease or any type of germs to the best we can, to look out for that. So we are taking all the precautions. We are continually updating our plan based on Navajo Nation and CDC's plan and the circumstances. So thank you for that question.
Great, and thank you so much, representing from Dale Con Community School, the safety side of working with the Winslow Indian Healthcare Center. And as we are looking into our school reopening, the big question throughout Indian country and beyond, and a question to Dr. Shannon Goodsell, superintendent from Wonder Rock Unified School District, and same questions for you.
Yes, ma'am. Just to echo what everyone has said, all schools across the Navajo Nation are in essence implementing very similar procedures. That includes temperature checks, the vaccinations of all staff members, social distancing and CDC guidelines. Each one of us is measuring the square footage of our buildings and our classrooms to determine how many students can safely be in that room with a teacher. And that, of course, you also have to factor in elementary classrooms that students move. And so how is that going to work in regards to keeping students safe? Probably the most difficult thing impacting schools, and we all remember high school with class changes and the bell rings and students go from math to English, and then how does that work in regards to us making sure that we're safely doing that in a manner that meets CDC guidelines? Currently, at Window Rock High School, we're having conversations about bell schedules and the movements of students from class to class and how they come into school in the mornings and how they leave school in the evenings. And realistically for us, as far as implementing CDC guidelines, that's probably our biggest concern. We do a large amount, as does every school on the Navajo Nation, of deep cleaning. I cannot stress enough of a big thank you to all of the janitorial vendors that are servicing our schools throughout the Navajo Nation of their training that they have provided to our custodial staff of how to deep clean and disinfect and sanitize a building correctly. And we are all doing that in the evenings and on the weekends, and we're making sure that we are keeping a minimum in regards to the ability of germs to spread throughout our student population. And one of the things that I would like to give a shout out for Window Rock as we have faced this pandemic is just our staff. Our teachers have done online learning this year. They have done packet learning this year. We have done the Pony Express of parents coming through drive-through lines and swapping out homework, disinfecting that homework, putting it in plastic slickers, giving it to teachers to grade, getting it back out to students, getting grades reported into the Power School system, and trying to provide the best educational opportunity that we can for our school district. But I will tell you, one of the most proudest things that I am about Window Rock Unified School District is not only did I believe that we provided a world-class education in spite of a pandemic, but bless our bus drivers. Because Window Rock Unified School District not only took care of the educational needs, but we also took care of the health and nutrition needs of our students. And every day that we had school, our bus drivers drove their bus routes and passed out breakfast and lunch to every single Window Rock student. So we can't tell you how proud we are of their dedication in spite of a pandemic to service kids. But as far as implementing CDC guidelines, again, all of us are doing the same things in regards to social distancing, wiping down desks, deep cleaning buildings, making sure that our students are staying 6 feet apart. As far as for Window Rock Unified School District, next year, we're going to mask up still inside the buildings just to have an added extra protection. And plus, we got some logo masks and they look great. And so we're not only keeping everybody safe, but we're promoting a bunch of that school spirit. So we're going to mask up, and we think that this is going to be a great opportunity for our students to return to in-person learning. Thank you, LA.
Very good. Thank you so much. You pretty much answered a few questions that were coming across on the safety side for the students, along with the sanitizing of the schools and other schools representing from Delcon. Bill, are you also working on the safety side for the students, the sanitizing, and how we're talking about the buses that are out there? They have already been giving lunch to the students, and how the sanitizing is very important.
Yeah, yes, we've been doing all those same things. Of course, we do deep cleaning every day. Once a week, we have a mister spray that disinfects. It's the same thing industrial hospitals use to disinfect buildings. It's a disinfectant called a pellet, I believe. It's a spray, but we do disinfecting on a continuous basis. As far as food deliveries, we do deliveries, breakfast, lunch, throughout the week. For all 5 days, they get breakfast and lunch. We deliver that, and then on top of that, we have another food program for community members under 8 years of age that may not even be our students. So if they sign up, we deliver food to them also. Of course, we deliver packets, we disinfect packets, we put them off the side in a sunlit little area to stay for 24 hours to make sure any contaminants might dissipate. So we are doing all those same things. We are cleaning. We have obtained a lot of PP&E supplies, a lot of disinfectant wipes. Our staff wipes down their personal areas every day. We wipe down the doorknobs with like Clorox disinfectant wipes, or Lysol disinfectant. We have Lysol spray it kills 99.9% of diseases. So we are doing a lot to, make sure that everything is safe. As far as our food handlers, they wear gloves, they wear masks when they're preparing the food. And so everything is very, very well sanitized. And again, just as Mr. Goodsell said, You know, we can't thank enough our bus drivers, and we have bus monitors go out there and deliver the food, pick up the homework. They actually come face to face sometimes with the students, even though they still are maintaining social distancing. All the staff, it's one of the things that I mentioned, and I'm getting ready for a school board report. And one of the things I wrote down is the collaborative effort this year between all departments has been great. Of course, we did run residential for a short while until we were told we had to shut that down. But our residential staff has, stepped up and, helped with food deliveries. We have some students that go to our school live more than 70 miles away from Delcon. They usually stay at our residential. So, we still need to get them and service their needs also. So yes, we've done all that. Thank you.
And thank you so much for going out of your way for our students going the distance. And let's touch base with Pat Ghani, our acting superintendent of schools. And what we're talking about safety, and that we're leading into schools reopening. And you can elaborate on the opening and sanitation from your part.
Nana LA ado kwa agina ida kirigi o di ultra anadle do da bohone zashi ado ultra ashi yin yesh adet ako kodo ya anid ba yashti di naha alchinin linigi yat is wale bebel na iljol ado yo ni go bansi kes ako because asa anigi shi akot ani o Kodo ya Department of the Net Education ya ultra superintendents dan linigi yilnad nishkunzacha hojish akod AAD school plans yilnigi be khatadet khan zahn nahaljish ya di ultra nazna ligi clean in the whole ado ya go kheda mado jedo visitors that dan linigi Ado alchin ildo yahana krigo ya di temperature screenings ilninigi lato khot dolel ado di na be khob nahasso aldo bakha atin the public health emergency orders ilninigi ati benel nishildo aje be den hodit ahi ya di in ni bikita asti igi khot dolel Bakha ya public health emergency orders. Ako edo lato abig ahonil indo lelbedi no ya di ultratnas neligo ya belhuilne Department of the Net Education do. Ako di nle at oje counties dan linigi do states dan linigi ya di face mask requirements yagi ne hotayi la lako. Ako di kwa again Navajo Nation leadership. President Nez, do Dr. Jill Jim, do Zel, Inindal Nashigi, Adi Quaginabe, Hopanahasso, da Inish, Naz Niligo yat what edoleth, Adi Quage, Echana Abahigi, Han, Sagoshi ya, Bichat Ado, Ako, ya di Clato beat us so. Ako, what ashi yan hina idikit halonle. Ado di ultra hanza nahal jashi what abbe di plans ilnigi bitas ko ila di le ilchiniaj dan bingoda anle ana ada 6 feet apart ilnigi di kwage ilchiniaj bit desk naz nligi da what edole sto di khastan des es الصادنازنل عادو ديتا التانيجين دا الشنياج آج خجوبا أشتأدنوت الكي ناناكا دي cohorts النيجي أخد بالناس نشتغل لخا الشن أكو دي كو transmission النيجي نيجي خطان دي لو إيجي أن قالزن دولة نو دي خان توشين CDC يلنه Adi hot aj ashtoid ini aj bena anish. There's studies that take place at CDC. Ado guidelines kahin dehigi adi kodo school leaders ya halne. di llatot a ochot a beat das zohto ban saha kesko ben nacha dihot a school reopening plans hat deilnigi hata dilia da ni go ya yaltie. Ako kwa agedi hehe I anigi kodo ni hisenolts ado na edikidigi ilto kwaje be yolni ilto a be nil tog it ya kodo ni hilchuhid ado lelti I anigi ako hehe nana LA ako di han so shi ya di ultrat nas ne lego yinal nishti safety ilnigi an leche del tro ilchini yaje be ya het ashi gin del to khot al dahan dahaz tra di 6 feet apart ilnigi. There are provisions in place aj to an le CDC ne do apan sa kesko to ako amado je enolnigi hina etiket sol anigi. I encourage parents to engage with their local school administration to understand their plans and to provide input. Ishint adol la enkit adon hina idikit halongot ashon de di oltratnas neliko bilnalnish khodeta jodi aidan bachna hol jishti oltrat khanata huil jishigit betsaid dolal bin yesh adnit edolal LA thank you again for that question.
Hagushila a het dole ako di na de kidigi a stashi ki house bina de kidot and genopa the house net or het dole the chini hanachi do hata il tribe and Navajo Prep. Dora, let's lead you into the schools reopening there in Farmington at Navajo Prep and the safety side of it. Are we ready?
Yes, I believe we are. We're ready at Navajo Prep, and we've actually begun a slow rollout. So we have had students on campus, and we're really proud to say that we've had very high success rates. We've followed the plans and the guidance outlined by many different agencies, including the CDC, DODE, New Mexico Public Education Department. And what we've done in the way that we've created our plans is used a collaborative model. There's other states and other regions of the country that have created these plans and reopened far earlier. And so we've learned from their best practices. Navajo Prep is expanded outside of the Four Corners. We've reached out to schools all over the country. What did you do? How did you do it? Did it work? What could you have done better? And we've included that information into our own reopening plans. And the reason why we do that is because we want to learn from those around us. Similarly, our head of school, Mrs. Shauna Vicente, created a professional learning community for school leaders on the Navajo Nation to bring people together. What are the best practices? What are we struggling with? How can we learn from each other? How can we truly, truly be collaborative in this process? And in doing these things and having this outreach, we've created a plan that has been very successful, and we know it's going to continue to be successful. We've had stakeholders who have come into our buildings, like we've had the fire marshal, the BIA safety inspector come through, look at the ways that we've set up our buildings, the ways that we've changed our classrooms, the new changes we've made to, like I said before, our faucets, our touchless toilets, all of these different things. And we've taken their recommendations and we've put them into action. There's part of this that is planning, and then there's part of this that is action. And so when we start to act and we start to implement, we have to be ready to do the training of our staff and our students. You can have a beautiful plan, but is the plan ready to be implemented? Meaning, do students understand? Do they know why they're wearing a mask? Do teachers understand the importance of 6 feet? Is there a common and shared understanding around why we have these protocols and how important it is? At Navajo Prep, I can say yes, there is. We've seen very, very careful and consistent implementation of the new protocols. And that makes me confident that all schools can do this. All schools can respect this norm that allows us to achieve our goal of bringing people back together. It can be done safely. I also wanted to share that another safety feature that we've implemented at Navajo Prep, in addition to many of the other components that were mentioned from Window Rock and Delcon, is surveillance testing. So every week, staff members are selected to do a random COVID test. We've been doing this for months, and we've had a 0% positivity rate, which helps us to feel a little bit safer at work. Of course, we hear about asymptomatic cases, and this is one way that we can prevent any spread of asymptomatic cases. We are looking as a school to expand our surveillance testing to include students next year. So we're looking at how we might be able to do that to ensure that if there is a possible transmission, that we can stop the spread before it happens.
Well, thank you so much, representing from Navajo Prep, as we lead right into our Indian Health Service, Dr. Powell, and a lot of questions going your way. The first, what is the medical perspective on school reopening? How can schools safely reopen?
Yeah, thank you, LA. I want to go back to a question that you posed earlier, which is what is there to celebrate? And so in answering your question, I think one of the things from my perspective is the incredible collaboration, such as what you've heard from the panelists tonight and Acting Superintendent Ghani. For me personally, it's been an incredibly difficult, but it's been a wonderful experience undertaking the collaboration part. And all that really boils down to, we've learned so much all together. You know, I've learned so much. So the health people have learned so much from the school leaders about, well, you know, health people can say this or that, but in the real world, how is that going to work? So this collaboration, all of us have moved forward together. And I think, you know, echoing what Dean Tabram just said, you know, if places implement the framework, then schools will be safe. That's the critical thing. And all of this collaboration has come together to develop a really wonderful Navajo Nation COVID-19 Safe Schools framework, which I believe, if I'm understanding, was just accepted by the Navajo Nation Board of Education yesterday. And this offers really a concrete distillation now of everything we've learned. I would say that, you know, reflecting back, you know, a year ago, 14 months ago, there was a lot of confusion about what the main things to do were. And the framework really simplifies things now to focus on what's most effective and most important. And so specifically, that includes vaccinations, right? One thing I'd like to echo to this group, you know, we've done an analysis locally where we found that among students in our schools, many times the public schools in our region, if there were any cases identified that had involved a student at any school, the vast majority of those cases actually came from the home. So for families out there, you know, what can I do if I'm thinking about my kid? Well, really the important thing is what's happening at home. Are all the adults in my home vaccinated? That would be my number one thing right now. Because really, when my child goes to school, they're more likely to bring something from my house to the school than they are to pick something up at the school and bring it back to my house, okay? And there's science behind that. One thing that's really important is that this particular virus really likes to be shared between adults. That's the primary pathway, is between adults who are not vaccinated. So we shut that down by vaccinating the adults in that scenario. This virus doesn't do so great. It doesn't hang around as long and is not at as high a level within a child. And so that's a really interesting thing for all of us to live through. And this is a new experience for us all. So it's very, very different than, say, influenza. which loves little kids and loves children. And every teacher knows, right? Like we all bring the stuff from the kids back to us. Well, this virus is kind of the reverse of that. It's really something that if we really do the right steps amongst the adults, then everything else falls into place. So I would say have confidence in the plans. The plans are the product of unbelievable collaboration, and we have amazing resources in our area in order to, come up with the most effective strategies for implementation on Navajo Nation. And that's been really wonderful because, we look at all these things that come out from CDC and other leading organizations around the world, and we look at that and we say, hey, how does this work here? What's different about our environment here? And that collaboration is the key. So thank you, LA. I'm happy to be here with the group. It's just a pleasure to listen to all of the steps that all these school leaders and the school leadership on Navajo Nation are ensuring are being implemented all across.
Right, Dr. Powell, representing the Indian Health Service, there are a lot of questions about the vaccination. Now that we have the numbers down, the youngsters 12 on up, what are the outcomes of young students that are being vaccinated? With that being said, are we ready to reopen for students to be back in the classroom?
The outcomes are amazing. I mean, I think my perspective as a pediatrician is that I am thrilled with how well this vaccine works. Pediatrics, we're all about vaccinations. And, we have wonderful leadership within the medical community that we benefit from immensely. And we have a wonderful history of vaccination here, in the Navajo Nation region in particular, very specifically. So we're building from a really strong framework. Across the board, we have really high levels of vaccination. And really, just to put it out there, this vaccine for COVID works so well. It's an amazing vaccine. So I would say the outcomes are fantastic. And we're thrilled that so many of our youth in that age range, for me, it worked just today. Everybody was vaccinated who came into my clinic. It was fantastic. They've gotten out there, gotten their vaccines. So thank you, families. And man, we are really getting there.
Great. So with all our panelists this evening, that a lot of great information, pretty much similar of the reopening, the safety side. And let's talk a little more about the bus routes that will be going out with the sanitation. Are we safe? Are our buses ready to take their route? And let's start with Delcon Community School.
Yes, I do believe our buses are safe. We do have dividers between all the seats already. We actually disinfect the buses on a daily basis. We are prepared. We already have plans in place on protocol on how to load a bus and how to unload a bus. Students will be scanned, temperatures taken before they get on the bus. The load, the first person's on will go to the back of the bus and then load up to the front. And then when we exit the bus, the people in the front will exit first and then go to the back. We will have a bus monitor on each bus. Students will be required to wear masks, and students will not be able to sit together unless they are from the same family, brothers and sisters. But we have put protocol in place. We put dividers between all the seats. So again, there is extra protection on all our buses, and we are disinfecting our buses daily, even now when they go out for runs, to bring home will start coming in on buses. But we are prepared to pick up students. We are prepared to make special and extra bus runs and expand our pickup times and drop-off times. And have more routes if we need to. We did, purchase a school activity bus a couple of years ago. So besides our regular school buses, we can also use that to pick up students. And again, we're limiting to a certain number of students per bus. So we have looked at all of that. So thank you for that question.
Great, and also represents all the schools within the Navajo Nation. I thank you for elaborating on the buses that'll be out in your remote area. From the Winter Rock Unified School District, with your venue sporting event having a capacity of more than 8,000 student athletes that'll be representing, or even higher, Mr. Bidgsale, how will we be approaching the student athletes? Will they be in the bubble, or are parents, guardians ready to come out into your venue?
Yeah, that event center is pretty small, isn't it?
No, it's, well, I want to say one seat bigger than Chinley, and Chinley says bigger. But,
May the trash talking begin.
But I think we need to share the information about fans that are coming out. Are we ready to come into your facility safety-wise?
Yes, ma'am, is the answer to your question. We have all of the same similar safety protocols in place for our fans coming into a facility such as our event center, or even our outdoor events, such as a football game, baseball game, softball game, track event. All of the same procedures that have been highlighted tonight are in place, temperature checks, etc. Of course, we are encouraging vaccinations, and a matter of fact, at our events, because they are such highly attended, I am very proud of our partnership that we have with the medical center. And they're planning on bringing mobile units out to the parking lots, so you can get yourself a shot and come watch a really awesome Window Rock Fighting Scout basketball game. So we're real proud of that. We are going to be masking up as well inside of all of our facilities during athletic events. And we're also going to ask our patrons to mask up if they're sitting in the stands outside at some of our outdoor events, just as an added layer of precaution. That may be a little bit of excess, but hey, it's okay if it keeps people in the modality or thinking of staying 6 feet apart and just making sure that they're properly social distancing. If wearing a mask helps you to remind you of that, then hey, more power to you. But we also do have all of the sanitation stations that will be stationed throughout the event center. Those are currently in place now, and we're getting that facility prepared and geared up for all of our events that we're planning on having next school year. But again, the same protocols and procedures that apply to our students are the same protocols and procedures that apply to our parents and our patrons as they come to watch our ball games.
Very well elaborated, and that within the year of our pandemic, I think we pretty much educated ourselves of wearing your mask, keeping your 6 feet distance, or washing your hands and sanitizing. So that will continue into the future, and it's great to know. So that's something that will go into the future, and sports is something huge throughout Navajo Nation Indian country. So we're looking forward to being in your venue as well. And
plus, LA, I would also say that if everyone is wearing a Go Scout, Fighting Scout mask, that's definitely going to guarantee a victory every night that we play, because those masks are just pump up that school spirit. So not only is it for your safety, but it's to help guarantee our kids a victory every night that we wear it.
Right, it gives you a little bit of bragging rights as well. And Pat Ghani, are you still online? And we'd like to get more information. We have our panelists who are representing. Can you give us a little insight behind the scene of some of the area schools that we represent under Navajo Nation Department of Dine Education, of all the rules, protocol? Are we all on the same page?
Nana LA for that question. Kodo yan na ide kid that di ultra andalne to bash that ehigi shin that ash at least she yadi ultra but not anish. The quick and short answer to that is yes. Kodo ya anidi ba wishne the Navajo Nation School Reopening Plan ya decreasing ilke dasto the safety protocols yitlinigi. So all of the schools located within the geographical boundaries of Navajo Nation are expected to follow the framework, which includes a checklist that schools have to compose a team and to do a self-assessment. AAD amado a parent representative, ado a local health official, whether that is an outreach to a local health facility or a school health aide or a school nurse, and also a teacher rep and administrative representation. What our checklist rede do lich di yugo yata asto. Cafeteria, students transitioning, the use of bathrooms, how do we assure social distancing for safety? A self-assessment. An attestation form by the local governing board. The school board members, policies. The board members school plan Navajo Nation school plan attestation Department of the Net Education for the schools to open. The schools have a certain number of steps to satisfy, and it is an equally applied and a set of criteria that have been established within the Navajo Nation school plan for schools alike here on Navajo Nation to follow. Did adamo o lelko di weekly school leadership meetings ne kako President Nes lato di ol alta not ani yiche khanadze. I'm very confident that we have equal communication and a set procedure and expectation for how schools are to position themselves as they solidify their plan with minimal standards for safety purposes. Ado di kwaege bahund ito lahiki di public health emergency order yilnedi at the Navajo Nation level. AD ado yan hit shelter in place. AD kodo gating criteria by yashti igi big echo di Navajo Nation Department of Health yilnadnish. So currently we are in the yellow phase of Navajo Nation school reopening. I'm sorry, not the school reopening, but the Navajo Nation government reopening for businesses and other enterprises. The green phase gating criteria, public health orders big echo. I just wanted to acknowledge that's how we are also working with the public health emergency orders. COVID-19 positive numbers big echo. I hope that answers the question that is being posed surrounding the communication that has been used. Ecuador Department of the Net Education so these school plans the answer is we certainly do hope so, because that is the expectation that has been communicated through our schools. They will have to file these plans with us prior to reopening. Thank you again for the question, Ellie.
Right, and you representing the Navajo Nation Department of Education, all the schools, our teachers, instructors, are they ready? They've been trained, and of course, we're all under the CDC recommendations. So are our teachers ready to be back in the classroom with their teaching?
Hehat Nana LA Ako Kodo in na ide kid that dishin Baal Traishin ya yin yesh edit ehdi ultra nad nahigi. Dot Sato be so the Navajo Nation School Plan Yislinigi, di ultra benad anin linigi bebansala. Bahashne ya di not anish chain dan linigi school board do ba policy bebehas ani yenal nashigi. AAD to have training for their employees. Jadikwishi ya as aunt enad nashin linigi di ultratnas niligo. Support staff yilninigi di bus drivers dan le adol chinyaji tandal inhingi counselors da those school nurses. Ajigi, there's that classification of employees within the school settings. Ado we have the professional certificated employees too, teachers that dan linigi. Ad and ahelt aban sahakes, equal and sufficient communication to have them trained. di bebansaladi ultratnas niligo. Hajo be ihilhan di Haleid an Halchiniaji Yahana Krigobena and Nishtolech. Ha ol kil el chiniaji elnana khatolech. Juti al ana kridolech ligi di hastan ades ezigi. Ajishin han soyin has ank ad kunza the holjish. Di ojin dane da yapitahodet anjuk ad yashi ilni which holjish. So our schools have had adequate time to make the preparations. We do know that some of our schools are much further along in the completion of their school reopening plan. And for them to really have a cohesive a plan in place well ahead of the decisions to be made for a reopening of our schools. Department of the Net Education has brought certain topics to the weekly leadership meetings to support our leaders. Ashi beat nahund ago at enle ol tate. That asahashi nahalim bina annishto batsa kes gon dashi. Eko yan hikodoban si keso as a technical support to the school leaders, and then to also serve as a network as well for our leaders. There is so much moving parts to their preparation at the local levels as they interface with you as the stakeholders and to their jurisdictional oversights as well, whether it is BIE, whether it is the state's Department of Education as well. So we do our very best to communicate and bring these various topics that are of importance to add to their resource so that they have that sufficient support in place for their completion of a school opening plan. So we certainly do have an expectation in those plans and protocols for schools to train their employees so that they are equally prepared. Also, to communicate the plan to the parents as well. So prior to reopening, if the schools have not already done so, they are to be soliciting parents and engaging them in a similar form as such tonight, and that they work with you. Egi mado jebla annashigi han soshi ya babini nado khodo babich elthe adonal nishin linigi ilto khojo babil kholne di bach it on nishigi han soshi ya yikit do tin a khoi bohonad zanti kho en khalchini yaje bilin on nishigi a khot ya khodo technical guidance bedi ninigi babaka neja ul khatnaz neligo ado di zel inin linigi ilto as Dr. Powell has been speaking to as well. We solicit the engagement of the representation from the doctor's perspective as well in these leadership calls. So he may want to also add as to how they continue to support these schools as well.
And thank you so much for your leadership, Patricia Agani, acting superintendent under the Navajo Nation Department of Education. We're going to be closing out with 2 minutes, starting with the Delcon Community School bill with a recap and closing out in 2 minutes.
Well, I want to thank everyone for the questions. I think we are ready. We are following the guidelines. We are working collaboratively with a lot of other schools with Doty. They do have the weekly meetings, the weekly updates. We get to ask questions. They have put out the Navajo Nation reopening plan. We've aligned our plan with that, with the CDC guidelines. And as Dara said earlier, we too have reached out to other schools across the state in Yuma and Tucson and Phoenix that have already opened to see, how they opened, what issues they were having, what were their best practices. So when it is time for students to come back and our school passes the walkthrough inspection by IHS and review from IHS or Winslow Healthcare Center and from the BIA for ventilation, spacing, those issues, we are ready for students to return. And our teachers are biting at the bit. They cannot wait to see students. And we had a drive-through graduation, a kinder graduation, and a drive-through 8th grade promotion. And I've never seen the students or the teachers smiling so much this year, because it was such a great sight just to see the students even from a distance. So again, we are ready. We are doing everything we possibly can. And our goal is to, number one goal is to keep our students safe. And then of course, our next goal is the best education possible. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight and to be part of this forum. Thank you.
And thank you so much, representing from the Elkhorn Community School, on to Dora from Navajo Preparatory with your closing remarks and any recap.
Thank you so much, LA. I wanted to start by offering a piece of advice to any families or parents or community members who are listening and maybe thinking, how is this going to work? Am I ready to send my child back? I really encourage you, get to know your school's plan. Get to know what the school has put into place. If it's being shared with you, if there's outreach opportunities, wonderful. Start to develop those relationships with your teachers and administrators. You'll find so much thought and work has been put into the plan, and you'll also find where you can support your child in staying safe. The guidelines have been written very clearly as to what the best practices are, what's expected from each child, what's expected from each teacher. Learn those expectations and hold them true in your own home as well. I really want to thank Acting Superintendent Ghani for her leadership throughout this time. Superintendent Ghani, you've been such a support to Navajo Prep. Your willingness to collaborate, to listen, and to problem solve has been a true service to our school, to our leadership team, as we have work to navigate the challenges at the local level. Of course, at Navajo Prep, we have students from over 52 different communities. Our buses run 1,200 miles a week. So we know that as our students and communities face different levels of challenges, we're ready to adapt our school to support each community need. I believe over the past several months, we've proven that we're ready. We're excited, as Mr. Watson has said. Our teachers couldn't be more excited to bring students back, and we're excited as well to do this in a safe way that brings more and more students onto our campus to learn safely. Thank you
So much for elaborating, representing from Navajo Preparatory School, and thank Shauna Pacenti for her excellence and leadership at Navajo Prep as well. And Dr. Goodsell, wrapping up and closing remarks.
Yes, ma'am. Just to emphasize the great advice that was given by Dr. Powell, when it is your turn, yes, it is time to roll up your sleeve and go get that shot. You're not only helping out yourself, but you are helping out your community. And go Scouts.
Very good. Thank you so much. Looking forward to being there at the Pihotsil Event Center coming up in the fall session of sports as well. And Dr. Powell, representing from Indian Health Service, as you are closing out here this evening.
I would just tell folks to have confidence. We're at the point now where you have the ability to read your school's plan, read the Safe Schools Framework. The plans work. They're easy to read. You have the power to get vaccinated. So have confidence. move forward, have confidence, do those steps, and absolutely appreciate Dr. Goodsell's plug to roll that sleeve up and get vaccinated. We all together, we have the ability to move forward in a safe way. Thank you.
And thank you so much, folks, as we close out with our special forum representing the Navajo Nation Department of Dine Education, the Navajo Nation School Reopening Plan, and very well elaborated by our panelists. I see Navajo Nation Department of Dine Education. Dine College, and thank you so much for joining us right here on Dine College's very own radio station. We are the Warriors representing on KXWR 92.1 Saline, Arizona.